Welcome to the Quantum Wealth Podcast. I am so excited that you are here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's the very first episode of the podcast, which is so exciting. I have been wanting to start a podcast for forever, and it's actually happening. It has manifested. Thank you for tuning in. I think that we have to start at the beginning, right? This is episode 1, and I thought that the perfect first episode would be how I healed my money mindset. Because if I can do it, you can do it too. I am not special. It is available to anyone. So we are going to go through all about my money mindset journey, where I was in my business, where I was in my personal life, what was going on in my head, the thoughts going on and repeat in my mind, and what led me to rock bottom so that I could pick myself up, how I discovered coaching, and how I totally transformed my money mindset. And now why I teach this, how I teach this to other amazing female entrepreneurs and help them get rich. So let's go way back and start at the beginning. What if I told you that the fastest way to making more money isn't actually working harder and it's slowing down? So I want to set the scene for you. I was at rock bottom. I was burnt out. I was broke. I was working all the time, working harder than anyone that I knew. I was running a brick and mortar business. It was a Pilates and yoga studio. I loved my business so much. I loved my clients. I loved my studio. It was a place that people loved. It was a sanctuary. It was a place that thrived on community. It was an amazing business. And I was hustling all the time, nonstop. I was doing most everything myself. I was living paycheck to paycheck. No matter how successful the business was, I was still struggling with money. And when I say I was broke, I don't mean I was a little broke. I have clients now that will say, well, I'm not making money, I'm broke, and they're making 6 figures. I just need you to know I was actually broke. Like when my business started making money, I was like, oh, I made 15 grand this year. Oh, I made 18 grand, 20 grand, 30 grand, 40 grand. I was barely climbing up. So at the point of rock bottom, I had started making money, but I was still making like 30, 40 grand a year. I was in a bad place financially. And I was in a bad place mentally. I was in total victim mode. Everything about my business was hard. It wasn't working for me. People wanted to give me advice and help me all the time. And I know that they meant well from that. I had clients telling me suggestions of how to get more clients and people jumping in with all their opinions. And the thing is, it wasn't the ideas that I needed help with. I needed help with the mindset. I had a lot of great ideas, but it was the way I was thinking about money, the way I was thinking about my business, the way I was thinking about the industry that was actually holding me back. I was in a bad place. So I was in victim mode. I thought it was the industry, right? Like in fitness, it is common for fitness studios, gyms, businesses in that industry to struggle, to have a lower profit margin, right? So I blame the industry. I thought that it was that the market was saturated where I was. It was everything but the way I was thinking about my business, the way I was thinking about money. And so turns out, in retrospect, I had a money mindset problem, right? So we're going to go behind the scenes of my business and how I completely rewired my relationship with money, my thoughts about money, my money mindset. And this is like the not fun part, right? So when I talk about money mindset work, I often say like it's not glamorous and it's not sexy and it's why people don't want to do it. And also, we need to do it if we want to get to where we want to be. If we want to have all the money that we desire and be happy and free when we get there. So I'm going to tell you all about my story and how I transformed my money mindset and the tools and the strategies that I use to actually transform it. Because here's what I know to be true. So many entrepreneurs, when they find me, are successful. They're successful on paper. They're doing great. And also, they're not where they want to be. They are stuck at the same income level. They have tried all those strategies, but nothing is clicking for them. They know deep down that something has to shift, but they're not sure what it is. And here's what I learned from experience. You can have all the business strategy in the world, but if your subconscious mind thinks you're not worthy of the money that you desire, you're going to stay stuck. Point blank, period. It will not change. And so, what you need to understand about earning money, about making money, about attracting money is it's not about doing more. It's about becoming someone different. It's about becoming an energetic match to the money that you desire. So let's go back to the moment after COVID, right? So many people know life before COVID and after COVID. And for me, after COVID, when I knew my business was going to be fine, we actually had a great year in 2020. We're really successful, did very well. And also, I was tired. I was ready for a change. My partner and I were ready for a big change. And we were kind of at this point in our lives where it was time to either open another studio to try to make some money, like do something new. I needed something new, something exciting, something energetic, because the monotony of my life and my business and my studio was just getting to me. I needed a big change. So I was considering opening another studio, and my partner had just finished his master's, and he was actually asked to apply to the PhD program at the university. And so we were thinking about that, and I thought, gosh, if we don't leave this city now, because I did not love where I lived. We were living in Las Vegas. It was so hot. It was dry. It's very brown, dusty. Great city, and I lived there a long time, and it was not for me. I never loved the weather. The desert's beautiful, but I don't want to live in it. And I was ready for a big change. I was ready to move. So I was like, if we don't take this opportunity now, we're never going to leave. We're going to get stuck here again. And then I'm going to have to wait several years and try to move again. So I decided, like, I really want to move. And my partner was on board. He was really supportive either way. So we decided we were going to move. And that was the point of like, okay, there is hope. I was kind of just in a funk personally because I was so tired and burnt out with work. And it gave me hope. But here's the thing. Moving proved to be very, very challenging. Moving theoretically is easy, right? So I'm the entrepreneur. He's the one with the quote unquote real job who had the health insurance. So he had to get a job, and then I would sell my business and we would sell my house that we lived in, right? Easy peasy. So first things first, I put my business on the market. Because here's the thing about selling a business. A business is only worthy of selling if someone wants to buy it. And it's only worth what someone will pay for it, right? And it was a very niche business. And I was doing everything. It was very heavily reliant on me being there, which was not good for selling the business. In retrospect, if I could go back in time, I would have started fixing that piece. I would have started removing myself so heavily from the day-to-day of the business years before. But I didn't know. I was just, I learned this one the hard way, right? So I put my business on the market and it wasn't selling. And then I put my house on the market and it also wasn't selling. So I put my house in the market about a week after real estate peaked. So my house was worth way more than I paid for it. I was in this great spot, and I was worried to list the house too soon because I didn't want to move multiple times, right? I didn't want to have to go live in an apartment, have to figure out something to rent. My partner was looking for a job. There were so many moving pieces that I wanted to list the house last. And as it turns out, that was financially, it was a mistake. It was a lesson that I learned the hard way. It would have been much easier to sell it when we were in this bubble, when it was worth so much more, and just taken all that money and figured out renting or whatever it would have been. But I didn't. And so basically the whole time I was trying to sell my house, it took over a year. The house prices peaked in the city, and then I just couldn't get ahead of them as they crashed down. And my house just slowly became worth less and less and less over the year. So here I am. There was so much going on with trying to sell my business, and that honestly is just another podcast episode. But I had someone fall out of escrow. I had someone pretend they were going to buy my business, copy it, open a business down the street, steal all my employees, violate our NDA. Like, there was so much drama and just negative shit going on around my business, and then also with the house, because we couldn't sell it. We kept dropping the price and dropping the price. And then my partner was trying to get a job. We were relocating to Seattle. It was a very competitive city, and it took him a while to get a job. So there was so much going on personally that it was really freaking hard. It was hard. And the combination of all these things started to weigh on me. I was already not in a great spot, but I was excited to move. But all of these things at once just started to weigh me down, and I became exhausted. I was resentful in my business. I couldn't get rid of it. I was so mad that I was so involved. I was irritated that I was working so hard, but I couldn't take myself out of it. And so I hired a life coach that was great, and she helped me so much. And she helped me with the way I think about money, the way I was manifesting. And also, at the time, I thought if I can just make $60K a year, I will be in such a good spot. And she believed that for me. She was like, you can get to 60K. 60K is amazing. And she thought that was a lot of money too. And this is important because it was what I needed at the time. And looking back, I needed a coach who would stretch me, who would think that $60,000 was not a lot of money. And if you ask me now if I think that's a lot of money, I would say no. And I'm imagining that most of you all listening and watching don't think that's a lot of money, right? So I was working on my mindset. I was working on the thoughts I was telling myself. I was working on manifesting. And here's what I knew about manifesting at the time. I knew that you had to decide what you want. I knew you had to visualize it, and I knew you had to feel it. And I was doing everything, but I wasn't feeling it. I would try to feel what I wanted to feel once my business was sold, once I'd moved, once my house was sold, when I had this whole brand new life, and I struggled with it. I could not sit in those feelings for any length of time. And because life was so hard and I was so negative and in such a victim mode outside of those moments of trying to manifest, 99.9% of the time, I was just vibrating really low. I was really negative. I was really miserable. So these negative thoughts, they were just all consuming me, and I was in a bad place most of the time, meaning that my manifestations were taking a really long time, and they weren't working out in my ideal scenario. Like the house, I would get an offer and then they pulled out, and we fell out of escrow with the business, with the house, things like that, right? So eventually it all worked out. Eventually my partner got a job. Eventually we moved. Eventually I sold half of my business, right? I went to the original person I wanted to buy my business, and I was like, you need to buy this business. Like, this business is meant for you. I love this business. I don't want to just give it to anyone. I had thought about it multiple times. I had tried to make deals with people that were going to change the total direction of the studio and the business and the clientele. And I was like, you have to buy this. And eventually it worked. Eventually it did, but it took a really long time. And that just led me to burnout because I was working so hard. I was in such a bad place emotionally, mentally. I was exhausted. So literally, I blew up my whole entire life, and I did it on purpose. But in retrospect, it was the best thing I ever did because it got me to a place to completely heal. So once we finally moved, sold half the business, I put the house on the market for rent and for sale, and I just said, whatever happens first, it happens. I don't even care anymore. I moved across the country. We moved to Seattle. We had a huge physical change, right? Like, the seasons were different. It's green. There's trees everywhere, and the weather is beautiful. People talk shit about the weather in Seattle, but people are just saying that because it's so busy here. We're trying to keep more people out. It's absolutely gorgeous. And as soon as I got to Seattle, I felt like I could breathe because I physically could no longer be in my business. So I had to just start relying on other people and start doing the paperwork and whatnot for selling half of the business, and just knowing that that would figure itself out. What it did when I moved is I released the attachment. I basically no longer cared what happened to the business. Of course I cared, but I wasn't so like, this has to happen. I wasn't death gripping it. The results and the outcome I wanted the way I was. Same thing with the house, right? When I was like, rent it, sell it, I no longer care. I let go of the attachment to what I wanted. And that was a huge relief. It took all this weight off of my shoulders. Because I wasn't physically at the business and I had to start relying on other people, not only to have my business partner take over and buy it, but like to make it more desirable, more sellable, more scalable, I just basically took everything off my plate slowly. And what I did during that time was I got really, really quiet. I got quiet with myself. I tuned in and I just slowed down. I had been go, go, go so long. There was so much noise in my brain that I didn't even know what I wanted. I didn't really know what would make me happy. It's just, when you're at that point of burnout and there's so much going on where you just need silence, like you need a pause and a break. That's what happened when I moved. I got this really big break. And here's the thing of it. The second we moved, my partner was out of town for months. So on top of having this huge physical change, this work change, climate change, like everything, also I was alone. And I will say I am an introvert. I love being alone. It was definitely a big shock to have him gone right when I had moved and we had moved. And honestly, the reason we moved is his job was like, okay, you can't keep traveling for work. So he had gotten a job throughout this process and was traveling back and forth. And they were like, okay, you have to come be here regularly. That's what made us actually move. And then as soon as we moved, he was gone. He was gone for work. So I was just all alone. And spending all that time alone, really quiet with myself, was so essential for healing my money mindset. I stopped running around and doing all the things, and I just got quiet and was able to tune in to myself. And when I tuned in, when I got quiet, then I was able to rebuild my life in a really intentional way. Because here's the thing that you need to understand. You don't have to blow up your whole life like I did. That's very dramatic. Do not recommend unless you want to and you're needing a huge change like I did. But you just have to get really honest with yourself when something isn't working for you and be willing to change it. And that takes getting quiet, right? So here are the habits that changed everything for me. When I slowed down, I had space to heal my relationship with money. And I realized from working with that coach that thought 60K was so much that she was no longer the coach for me, that I didn't want 60K to be enough. I was sick of money being hard. And I decided that it was no longer going to be hard for me. And that's when everything started to shift with the decision that it was going to change. And when I decided to change my life and heal my relationship with money, I started a lot of different practices that helped me. First and foremost, I started a morning routine. My morning routine to this day is so crucial to who I am, to how I manifest, to my well-being. I still, to this day, do not take clients before mostly 11 a.m., but definitely before 10 a.m. I'm not saying there's not a one-off, but as a general rule of thumb, because my mornings are for me. I spend my mornings journaling. So I do a lot of gratitude journaling. I practice gratitude for what I have. I also practice gratitude in advance as a form of manifestation. I sometimes will do journal prompts or journal on something that I'm calling in, on something that's going on in my life. Journaling is a way for me to get really quiet with my own thoughts. And it's always worked really well for me. I also spent my mornings doing visualizations. I visualized what I wanted my relationship with money to be, what I wanted my life to be, what I wanted my next business to be. Because you have to understand, at this point, I didn't know what my next business would be like, but I knew what I wanted my life to feel like. I knew the specifics of what I was going to be creating. I also read so much. Now, I was working very little during this time, and I had not read in years, not the way I started reading when I moved and when I just totally reset. And I started reading not just personal development books, but books for fun. Just literature that I wanted to read. I joined some book clubs and started reading things I never would have normally read. And it was so nice to just get lost in a book, to just have that quiet time by myself. I've always been someone who is religious about exercise, but during this season, I had been doing CrossFit up to this point, and I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. Part of it was I couldn't find a good gym, a CrossFit gym I liked. Part of it was I was sick of CrossFit. I wanted something that was not as hard on my body. I also was just making a lot less money. I didn't want to go spend money on a CrossFit gym, which was so much more expensive in Seattle than in Las Vegas. So movement looked really different for me. I started practicing a lot of yoga and Pilates, which I'd always done, but more than normal. I started walking every single day, like long walks. I spent so much time walking my dogs and taking the dog park. It was so enjoyable to just be outside with them, to be in nature with them, to be somewhere where I loved getting outside, to find new parks. And doing movement that was like slower pace that felt good was just really nourishing to my body. I went and did bar, which I liked, but I would do bar like a few times a month, and I had taught bar, but I made it my focus. And then I started running again. So I hadn't been running much distance because it just wasn't a form of exercise I was focusing on. But being outside, getting to run by the beach, oh my gosh, it was so incredible. I would just run to the beach from my apartment, and it was basically all downhill to the beach and all uphill back, but it didn't matter how long it took me. I would take the dog and I would run to the beach, and we'd walk on the beach for 30 minutes. Maybe she would swim, and then we would just take our time getting up the hills, getting back home, because I had nowhere to be. It was so nice to just have the slower pace of life. So not only was I moving my body in an intentional way, I was getting outside. I was cooking. Just for me, which was like whatever I wanted, whatever my body was wanting. My partner was gone, so I didn't have to worry about, oh, is he getting his protein and all that. I just had all this quality time to myself. And that's when I started working specifically on my money mindset too. So I started reading a lot of books about money mindset. And one of the books I read is You're a Badass at Making Money by Jen Sincero. I will link it in the show notes. It's an amazing book. And I love Jen Sincero. I've read a lot of her books. And it was so inspirational for me because I've always believed in manifestation. I always knew that I would be successful and I knew I would be rich. But when I read this book and I kind of had this whole reset, I decided this is happening and it's happening now. And one of the things Jen Sincero says in her book is to hire a coach that's really good with money. And that was a turning point for me. So I was like, okay, if she says to hire a coach that's good with money, I'm going to find one. So I started looking for one. And in the meantime, while I'm looking for one, I start visualizing. I am logging into my bank account and I am visualizing the number I want to see. I am visualizing a number I want to feel familiar with. I'm getting comfortable with amounts of money I want to spend, with prices that I want to feel normal to me, things I don't want to feel expensive. I'm writing down what I want to be earning, what I want my net worth to be, things like that over and over and over. And I'm learning how to create new thoughts on purpose. And I'm doing all these things, but what really moved the needle is I found this coach, and I found this amazing money manifestation coach, and she changed my life. And I followed her for probably 6 months, maybe a little longer, before I even hired her because I thought she was too expensive. I just thought her program is so expensive. I can't imagine paying that. That's insane. And I just consumed her free content. Well, finally, I dove in. I joined her program. She was amazing. I made back my investment so fast. I joined her mastermind. I went all in on my money mindset. And one of the things that I started doing when I went all in on my money mindset was I started visualizing the amounts of money, like I mentioned, my net worth, the amount that I wanted to feel comfortable spending. But I started looking at money in all different categories, and I started just gradually shifting the numbers I wanted. So the salary I wanted to be earning, I just gradually shifted it. The amount of money a client would pay me, I just gradually shifted it. The amount of money I would feel comfortable, say, paying for a handbag, a car, whatever it is, I just slowly started to build it. And that is literally how the Money Thermostat Tracker came to life. It is now a tool that is available. I will link it in the show notes. And it is the tool that helped me build my wealth thermostat in real time. It helped me to start thinking of prices and not being like, oh, I want to be a millionaire, so I'm going to think of $1 million. It helped me just gradually turn up the dial on what I wanted to be making, what I wanted to be charging, what I wanted to be earning. So every single day during this time, I was recalibrating my internal thermostat for wealth. I wasn't just thinking about being rich. You need to understand this. It wasn't just thoughts. I also practiced being her every single day. So the thoughts that I was thinking about my money thermostat, about my beliefs about money, about the things I was taught that I realized that I didn't even think were true, I just inherited these beliefs about money, I also started to practice a different way of being. So I stopped saying things were expensive. That was just a word that I no longer used because I didn't want anything to be expensive for me. It was either worth the investment or it wasn't, but it didn't mean it was expensive. I stopped thinking that money had to be hard to make because I saw this evidence for these people, my coach, the people in her course, where it wasn't hard for them. I had worked harder than all of them, and I was making the least out of so many of them. And I started just acting like this was true. So I remember my very first coach said, well, if you want to work less, you just have to start doing it. And I was like, what? That doesn't make any sense. But it was during this time that I was like, okay, I'm just going to work less and my business is going to make more. And it did. And the more I did it, the more money it made. And I really just genuinely couldn't believe it. I also started investing in my business in ways that I hadn't before, spending money on marketing, things like that. And it all started to pay off. So whatever I thought like, oh, this is going to work for me, it just did. My life transformed at such a rapid pace, and basically every thought I wanted to think, it started to become my reality. Whatever I wanted in my business to happen, it just started happening. Because once I saw these beliefs were what they were, just thoughts that I learned, not the actual truth, I chose new ones. And then those beliefs became my reality. I decided that I was worthy of making a lot of money, that money was going to flow to me easily, that my business was going to support my life, not the other way around. That I can work any schedule I want and make the money that I want. And here's what I want you to take away from this. Your money story is not set in stone. You get to rewrite it. You get to write it. Because the money story you have right now, unless you have intentionally chosen it, is probably made up of a bunch of subconscious beliefs that you learned before you were 7. And so not only did my business start making money, guess what happened? Of course, everything with that, I released this attachment to the how things were going to happen and that they were going to happen. And that's when I sold my house. I sold my business. I manifested this job that at the time I did not love, but in retrospect, it gave me so much confidence because it's the only 7-figure company I've run. And when I took it over, it was about to close and I made it $1 million business in less than a year, over a $2 million business in less than 2 years. And I'd run companies that large, but not small businesses, not where like I was the CEO making all the move. It helped me build this belief in myself. So as I was doing all this money work, I was getting all this evidence from this company where I was running, from selling my house, from selling my business. I sold the other half of my business. And through that, I realized like, I love this money mindset work. I freaking love it. And it's what I want to be doing. And so then I decided that I was going to sell the other half of my business. I didn't want to be part of that business anymore. I wanted a clean break from Las Vegas. I had been traveling back and forth a lot. The business was doing well. Financially, was it the right move? No. In retrospect, it was not. The Pilates industry is booming. That business is doing so well. But I needed to release that to really focus and figure out that I wanted to be a coach, that I wanted to be a money mindset coach. And so I sold the other half of that business. I decided how it was going to happen. The first half I sold, I kind of did it out of desperation, and it wasn't the parameters I like. I didn't like the terms. And I decided, no, the second half, I'm going to sell it like this. I'm going to get this money. I'm going to get paid in a lump sum. This is how it's going to work. And it did. Throughout this process of choosing my thoughts, of practicing all these tools for manifesting the life I wanted, the habits that changed my reality, I realized that my whole life had fallen into place. And now I was equipped to do what I wanted to do, my dharma, my destiny, which is to teach other women this skill that you can heal your money mindset. Because here's the thing, there are so many amazing money mindset coaches out there. And the ones I had worked with, the ones I had been with, they hadn't run businesses like I had. They hadn't struggled the way I had. They hadn't struggled later in life. Like, there are stories about people who are struggling, who are broke, and they're in their 20s. And to me, that was never relatable, because it's like, everyone's broke in their 20s. You're not special, right? Like, but I struggled well into my 30s. And if I can change my whole mindset and my whole reality as a result from healing my money mindset, you can too. So here's what I invite you to do. I want you to take a second and I want you to ask yourself, what is one belief that you're carrying around that isn't even yours? Maybe it came from your parents. Maybe it came from the world around you. Maybe you picked it up at school, in your business, at work, from another entrepreneur, whatever it is. And here is the power. You get to decide if you want to keep this thought. You get to decide if it's serving you. And if it's not, you get to drop it. You get to choose a different thought right here, right now. And it's not going to feel true for you in this exact second, but it will, I promise. If you practice it, it's going to start to feel true, and you're going to start getting evidence that it is true. I went from broke and burned out to working in a business I love, feeling calm, aligned, having financial freedom, not because I worked harder, but because I changed my inner world, my inner thoughts about money, and my outer world shifted. And that shift is available for you. So this week, here's what I want you to do. Start tracking your thoughts about money. Every time a thought about money pops up, I want you to write it down in your notes app on your phone, write it down in a journal, whatever it is, and decide if it's serving you. Get familiar with what is running the show in your subconscious mind. Because once you start to see these things, you can shift them. And if you want support with this, I actually have a free tool. It is the 100 limiting beliefs about money that are keeping you stuck. This is the key to manifesting more money. Because with this free download, you'll start to see, oh my gosh, I had someone tell me I have 70 of those beliefs. I tell myself those on the regular. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. And then you'll be able to shift them. It's totally free, and I will link it in the show notes for you. If you are not where you want to be financially and you've done the work, you're an action taker, you do all the things, you've tried working harder, you have a subconscious block around money. And the fastest way to break through it is to heal your relationship with money. Thank you so much for listening to episode 1 of the pod. I am so honored that you made it all the way through. If this episode resonated with you, please do me a favor. Leave a review, share it with a fellow entrepreneur, and subscribe so that you don't ever miss an episode. New episodes drop every Thursday, and trust me, you're going to want to be here for what's coming next. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next week. That's a wrap on today's episode. If you're still here, I know you're serious about quantum leaping your income, and that commitment is what separates the dreamers from the doers. Here's what I want you to do next. Pick one insight from today and take action on it. Because here's the thing, transformation happens in the implementation, not just the inspiration. If this episode shifted something for you, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen. It helps other ambitious, heart-centered women find the show. And if you're ready to take this work deeper and finally break through that income plateau, I'd love to invite you to book a discovery call with me. Because here's the thing, podcasts give you the what, but coaching gives you the how. It's what takes you from, I know what I should be doing, to, holy shit, I actually did it. Head to the show notes or to jillianminter.com to grab your spot on my calendar. Until next week, keep choosing abundance over scarcity, alignment over hustle, and remember, you're meant for more. You just have to believe it's yours.